recording. There it is. Okay, good evening, everyone. Sorry about the technical difficulties yesterday. I sent the class to be recorded to Zoom, and when I'm looking at the Zoom account, they say they've been processing it. It's been over 24 hours, so it doesn't seem to be working. So I guess Zoom dropped the ball on that end. So yesterday's class, it's just not going to be available for people to get the recording of that. So we're continuing tonight in the third chapter, which we've begun. And a couple paragraphs in, we're on the words, Davar zeh hodianu chachamenu. Just fix this up, Zichron Livracha. That's where we're going to start right now. So basically, we're discussing a person wants to inspect his ways. He has to do two things. He has to know what's the goal that he has in life, what's the true good, and what's the true bad. And then he has to look at the actions. Do they fit to the true good? Then that's fine. If it's to the true bad, that's not good. And you have to reflect before you do things and after you do things. Before you do things, you got to make sure that what you're doing is the right thing. And after you're finished, you have to weigh everything and measure to make sure you did it properly. And if it's a good thing, it should be continued. And if it's not a good thing, you've got to figure out why you did that and figure out strategies to get rid of that. That's basically what yesterday's class was about, very briefly. So now we're continuing. V'davar zeh hodianu chachamenu zichrona livracha. And this idea, the rabbis have taught this when they said the following, Ba'amram. There was a big debate, the Gemara Eruvin, two schools of thought. Was it better for man, Noach Lola Adam, was it better for man to be created or not created? And after a 2.5-year debate, the Gemara concluded, Noach Lola Adam Shaloni Ra. It would be better for man not to be created, Yoser Mishanivra, than if he was created. At the end of the day, it's better that man would not have been created. The Gemara continues, Va'achshav Shanivra, now that he has been created, Yefashpesh b'masav. He should do a pishpush of his actions, which would mean to examine his actions. Ve'ikar amri, and there's others who say not yefashpesh b'masav, but yemashmesh b'masav, from mishmush to feel. Well, so we'll have to see what's the difference between examining and feeling. So Luzzatto says this is the difference. And it appears Shishnei Lashonos that these two expressions saying Shtei Asharos Tovos Umo'ilos Ma'od. They're two very good warning instructions for us that he'll explain shortly. But before we get to that, we really need to discuss this Gemara. And this Gemara that says it'd be better for man not to have been created. What does the Gemara mean by that? It's very unusual because Hashem created the world, as we've learned in the beginning of the book, to bestow pleasure to mankind. So if it's to bestow pleasure to mankind, how is it possible to say it's better that Hashem should not have created man? So the Tosfos commentary right on the Gemara says that when the Gemara says it's better for man not to be created, he says that's referring to Stam B'nai Adam, average people. For average people, it's better for them not to be created. But for the tzaddik, the righteous person, then that's good. It's good he was created and good for the generation. That's an amazing thing. So it seems that the purpose of creation is realized for the tzaddik, but if a person doesn't work very hard to fulfill his duty that we have in this world, we're saying better he shouldn't have been created, because only through real hard effort are you going to accomplish this goal. So that means that, quote unquote, the average people, the stam, that's the way Tosfos refers to it, as stam b'nei adam, Their action stam can also be like satum, which means undeveloped. They don't go towards the way of truth. They don't make the effort to become righteous people. So what Tosfos is saying is that the world is very worthwhile to be created. Very worthwhile. If you become a tzaddik, it was a good thing. That world was created for you. You made effort, and you're going to get rewarded. Everything that Lutzado tells, that's why Hashem created the world. And for those people, it was very much worth it to create the world. There was never a question about that. But the question is, what about everybody else? Everybody else who doesn't make the effort to develop their personalities, then it'd be better that they weren't created. And this is what the Chazal are saying, that they have a vision that starts from the beginning of time till the end of the time. And Chazal understands all the traps and the stumbling blocks that are there to trap a human being wherever he goes, to make all these mistakes. And it's so easy to fall. So for the stam person who doesn't really make the efforts, it's really not worth it for him to be created, because he's in so much danger and he will probably fail, as Lutzado has said. People who don't exercise care and zehirus are like the blind person by the riverbank that's going to fall. But okay, so now stam b'nei adam, not a good idea. But now that we are created, well, they have to use some kind of methods and strategies to get through this damaging world, as it were. And that's what Chazal is saying. You have to examine your ways, every single thing you do, look at it from every direction, and decide if you should be doing it. And after you've done it, to decide if you should have done it, and try to remove all those stumbling blocks. So some of the rabbis give this analogy to a very small bird. A very small bird. A very small bird is very weak. It doesn't have the power to stand up against its enemies and ambushes. But a bird has one very good thing that it can do, and it can save it from a lot of danger. It always moves its head around very much. It constantly scans around its surroundings without stopping. You ever, next time you look at a bird, see how long he keeps his head in one place? He doesn't. So the bird is always awake to danger without any hesachadas, without any interruption. He's always ready to fly at the blink of an eye. So although that bird isn't strong, but it can fly. So to a human being, we're very weak, so to speak. We don't have the strength to really fight against the Yetzer Hara, because he is stronger than us. He's trying to ambush us. Yetzer is a much bigger warrior for us. But we are like that bird a little bit, that we have to keep our eyes open and fly away from trouble as soon as possible. And this is what examining our ways is all about. If we use that power properly and we're always on the lookout, then we're able to overcome or get away from the Yetzer Hara. Now, David HaMelech himself, and you can't find a bigger tzaddik than David HaMelech himself. And he says, even when he's on the right path of Avodas Hashem, he sees that the Yetzer Hara always has traps for him. So if David HaMelech, who's such a tzaddik, and he always sees the traps of the Yetzer Hara, certainly we have to worry about those traps. But you see, David HaMelech was ahead of us because he could see the traps. And he used the power of examining his ways to avoid those traps. So really the worst thing a person can do is not to do this avoda, because then you're finished. The traps will get you and you'll be totally wiped out. So that's the first part of the Gemara over there. So now let's continue to the next part in Lutzado. So now he's going to say the difference between pishpush and nishmush. So he says, Kine, ha-pishpush, when we say pishpush, examining, hulachkor al klal hamaisim ulisponable, is to look over all the actions you've done in general. Hanimtza behem maisim asher lo yaseh, are the things that maybe he should not have done. Asher einam hochem al pi mitzvos Hashem v'chukov. It doesn't follow the paths that Hashem wants us in Torah mitzvah observance. So if I found out something that I shouldn't have done, I reflected on the day. So kikol asher yimotza me'ela yavare min olav. If you find anything you did during the day, burn it out. Burn it out completely. Finished. Just like bir chametz. Just like that's a good expression he's using. Just like we have an idea of bir chametz. Same idea. You should be mavaret. You should just totally get rid of it. Okay, next paragraph. Mishmush, what's mishmush? It's to investigate even the mitzvahs you did. You figure, I did a mitzvah today. I did this mitzvah, I did that mitzvah. That's great. I don't have to spend any time reflecting on that. I went to Shacharis today. I davened, I put on tefillin, I gave tzedakah, I did all these things. I don't have to inspect those. No, the mishmush, the handling of them, feeling them out, means even the mitzvahs. Lachkor v'liros, to really investigate and see, are there any ulterior motives in the mitzvahs that you've done that aren't proper? Or is there any part of that mitzvah that also has an evil part? That you have to remove it and burn it out. Again, that expression of burning out. So what we're looking for is the bad motives. The motive implies what you're thinking about, and it wasn't necessarily for the best reason. For example, maybe you did the mitzvah because you know people will praise you for this mitzvah. Ooh, this is a mitzvah, everybody's going to think I'm a very chashuv person. Or maybe you did the mitzvah because if I do this mitzvah, the person will owe me a favor. So you got to make sure that the motives were proper and that the actions were mamish, completely proper mitzvahs. You did it properly. And there could be a lot of faults in the mitzvahs that we do. Even if you davened. I davened today. But did you daven carefully? Did you daven with kavanah? You didn't daven with kavanah. What does it help? Many times, you said the Shema, but you didn't have kavanah with Hashem's name. So what does it help? Many mitzvahs that we do, we have to be careful that they are mamish, perfect mitzvahs. So even if you've done mitzvahs, you're not off the hook, as it were. So it's very interesting. So even the good we do has to be the very best. If there's any bad, get rid of it completely. And the good has to be even better. So they tell a story of two Hasidim. Two Hasidim were discussing their spirituality and what's going to happen when they're going to come before Hashem's Bezdin on the final judgment day. So one Chassid said, "Oy vey, woe unto me. They're going to find all the Averis I did. It's going to be terrible. I'm going to get punished. I'm so worried about the Averis they're going to find in my life." The second Chassid said, "I'm not so afraid of that. If they catch me with an Avera, I'll say, listen, I just couldn't control my Yetzer Hara. The Yetzer Hara was very strong. Hashem, you gave me a very strong Yetzer Hara. So he beat me. That'll be my answer. But let me tell you what I'm really afraid of. It's not my Averis I'm afraid of in Judgment Day. It's going to be my mitzvahs. And they're going to ask me, why didn't I perform my mitzvahs properly? They're going to ask me, how come when you were davening to Hashem, your mind was wandering? How come when you were learning Torah, you had your cell phone with you? And whenever it would ring, you'd stop learning Torah and go to the cell phone. Why did I do certain mitzvahs just mechanically without ever thinking about it? Why did I do certain mitzvahs in a show-off way to impress people? That's what I'm really worried about, because remember, Hashem didn't put us on the world to avoid doing Averos. Of course we should, but that's not the purpose. The purpose was to do mitzvahs. So the real purpose of mitzvahs, Hashem's going to walk if you didn't do the best mitzvahs properly. That's what I'm really afraid of. So, a person who is a very discriminating shopper, they're always careful to buy things of the best quality. When you go to the store, you just don't walk in. Maybe a man does, but a woman certainly doesn't. You go in the store, you just don't pick up the first 5 apples that are in your hand. You're going to pick up the apple, look around, make sure it's good. That's got a big bruise. I don't want that one. Well, just like when we want to buy things in the store, we want the finest quality. Our mitzvah should be the finest quality. And if we don't have the best quality, it's going to be our fault. It's interesting, in terms of quality, to tell a short vignette of the Chose of Lublin. He was returning from Tashlich, from Rosh Hashanah. Okay, we know on Tashlich, we symbolically throw away our averos. We empty out our pockets. So he was returning from Tashlich, and he met his student, Rav Naftali of Ropshitz. So the Rebbe said to Naftali, says, where are you going? He says, I'm going to the river to pick up the sins that Rebbe that you threw away. What does that mean? In other words, the Chose of Lublin was so great that what do you think? The Chose from Lublin, what do you think he threw away on Rosh Hashanah? Probably some mitzvahs that he didn't do in the best way possible. On his level, he threw away those mitzvahs. That's his averos. And Naftali Rab says, boy, I wish I could have those mitzvahs that you had because I'm so far away from that avodas Hashem. So it takes a lot of care and responsibility, and that's what we have to be careful about. So when you finish your day, you're checking what averos did you do? And more importantly, you're also checking the mitzvahs that you're doing to the best quality. Okay, let's continue on to the next paragraph. Now, what does he give an analogy to this? It's like a person who is feeling out a garment. One second, I did something not good. 1 second. Okay, I'll get it again. Livchon hatov v'chazaku, to check if the garment is good and strong, or if it's weak and worn out. Just like when you're checking your garments to make sure that they're clean and strong and they're ready to take on another day, so you should feel your ways. To inspect their nature with the greatest discrimination until they're left pure and clean. Just like you clean your garments, you want your garments to be perfectly clean. Nobody goes out in public with a big stain on their shirt. So you have to make sure that all your mitzvahs that you've done are perfectly clean. Klal hadavar, what's the general rule? A person has to inspect all his actions and examine all his ways. Again, the ways, the specific actions, and the derech hachaim. So he should not leave for himself any bad habits, any bad characteristics. Certainly averos and intentional sins for sure shouldn't have any, but even the roots to that shouldn't have. And now he gives a very interesting mashal. So I see there's a need for a man, first has to be meticulous and weigh his paths. Dvar yom biyom, every day. Don't leave it for once a month, once a week, every day. And what does he compare it to? Kesochrim hagedolim, like the big businessmen. Asher yefal su tomid kol hiskehem, that they are always evaluating their business matters, l'man lo yiskalkalu, so they don't get damaged. So he's comparing this to great businessmen. So let me share with you something that I saw in a book written by Dale Carnegie, Oliver Shul. And one of the books he wrote is How to Stop Worrying and Start Living. This is what he wrote. He tells you, I want to tell you a story about a tremendous businessman. His name was H.P. Howell. And when the news of his death came, it was that he died, but was in 1944, Wall Street was shocked. He was the leader in American finance, all these big things. Wall Street is a really big business tycoon. This is what Carnegie is writing about. And he said he grew up, he didn't have a lot of education, and he started like as a clerk in a store, and then he became the credit manager in another business, and then he moved his way up to power. So Carnegie says, he says for years, so he says one of the things that he says, what he credits his success. He says, for years I've kept an engagement book showing all the appointments I have during the day. And Carnegie asks, so how do you explain all your success? So he continues, he says, well, my family never makes any plans for me on Saturday night. For the family knows that I devote a part of each Saturday evening to self-examination and a review and appraisal of my work during the week. Saturday night. After dinner, I go off by myself, open up my engagement book, and think over all the interviews, discussions, and meetings that have taken place since Monday morning. I review the whole week. And I ask myself, what mistakes did I make that time? What did I do that was right? And what way could I have improved my performance? What lessons can I learn from that experience? He continues. I sometimes find that this weekly review makes me very unhappy. Sometimes I'm astonished by my own blunders. Of course, as the years have gone by, these blunders have become less frequent. This system of self-analysis continued year after year, and this system has done more for me than any other one thing I've ever attempted. And that's what a secular person, great businessman, had to say. So you could see that he wanted to be good at business. And to be good at business, what was he doing? He was making a cheshbon about everything he did. And that was just for money. Now, what about for our own eternal existence? How much of a cheshbon? What kind of a businessman are we? There's another story about a fellow, an employee in a food department somewhere in Israel. And he said how they have to make so many precautions on the job. For example, they have to wear steel-tipped boots to cut vegetables, that have special metallic gloves. When cleaning the floor, they got to seal off the whole area. They go on all the diktukim, all the pratim they have to do to be careful about every little thing. And he said, you know why? Because whenever somebody gets hurt, they bring in a special investigating team to find out what happens, to make sure it doesn't happen again, because they want to avoid any lawsuits. So you see, again, how careful you have to be, and that's the model of business. We shouldn't treat our avodas Hashem any different than that of how the businessmen treat their avodas Hashem, their business. Let's go back inside. So they're always weighing it. And how much time, and what should you do just like them? V'yikva itim v'sha'os. And you should v'yikva, fix, itim, times, and hours, lazeh, for this. Shelo yeh mishkalo arai. The weighing should not be something that's haphazard. Ela b'kvius gadol, but should have a great kvius, regularity. Ki rov ha'toldasu, because there's great benefits for going through this so often. So he's saying itim v'sha'os, times and hours, which means depending on the situation that you need. But the primary, these three words are very important. Ve'yikva, kviyus, it has to be consistency. Every day you got to be reflecting on this. And if it needs sha'os, if it needs hours, then you have to even spend hours on it. And it says itim in the plural language, meaning to say includes every day. Friday, Shabbos, Yom Tov, every day you have to make these inspections. There's great tzaddik, Reb Moshe Leib from Sasov, wrote in one of his svarim. He says, being kovei itim for this He says, I need to spend at least 2 hours a day to know on the proper path to Bia. Okay, Lutzato and other places said we should spend an hour a day. Okay, I understand it's going to be a little large for us. Oh yeah, how about we start with 5 minutes a day? Before you go to sleep, before you say Kriya Shema, go through the day. Have a checklist. Make yourself a list. Learning, tefillah, staka, these. How much did you do? Any specific events happen? To review all those things, like a businessman. And now, and the rabbis of blessed memory, they taught us how important the need for this type of calculation. This is what the Gemara says on a pasuk in a shira, a very brief shira in Sefer Bamidbar. It says, Al Kain Yomru Hamoshlim Bo'u Cheshbon. And so the rulers said, let us go to Cheshbon. There was a big battle with Og and a number of warriors. The Jews fought and destroyed Og and they killed him. But at Bo'u Cheshbon, Cheshbon was the name of the city where the battle was. But the rabbis say, we're not going to learn the simple pshat in that pasuk. It says, Al Kain, and therefore Yomru Hamoshlim B'yitzram. Those who conquer their Yetzer Haras. How do you conquer your Yetzer Hara? When you say, Bo v'nechshav cheshbon shalom. Let's make a calculation of the world. Hefsid mitzvah keneged schara. The loss when you're doing a mitzvah. How much money or time you lose when you're doing a mitzvah and the reward that comes with. How much time does they do a mitzvah? How much does a mitzvah cost you? Versus the infinite reward of a mitzvah. Uschar avera, and what benefits you get from doing a sin in this world, keneged hefseda, compared to the eternal loss that you get from that. There's a lot to talk about in this little piece of Gemara over here. Let's think about why are Chazal using the story with the battle of Og, Melech HaBashan, that giant, as the example of making a cheshbon. Why that? Why are we using that event to do this? What connection is there? So the answer is, there's a saying that goes, a person can harm himself more than any enemy in the world. So let's take a look at Sichon. Sichon, who was the king of Cheshbon. It was one of the giants. So what happened? The Jewish people made a simple request. We'd like to pass through your land and we will pay you. Now imagine 2 million people, peaceful people passing through a country, what that would do for an economy. Think how much you would have gained with the tourist industry of letting the Jews go in there. That's all they said. Let's pass through in the land. So he could have had this great guest, earned a lot of money, and that would be amazing. And the Jews may not even have conquered the land. But what does the mighty Sichon do? And we know how mighty he is, because in the long hollow we mentioned how we have to praise Hashem that we were able to destroy Sichon. He was a very, very strong man. He was powerful. But he wasn't so powerful to conquer his Yetzer Hara. And he wasn't able to conquer his pride to let the Jews cross his border. That he wasn't able to. He was weak. He didn't have the power to conquer his own evil inclination. And that's what the Gemara is saying. That those people who don't rule over their Yetzer Hara and don't say, let's make a cheshbon, well, let's figure the cheshbon. Had Sichon made a cheshbon, things would have turned out a lot better for him. Same thing for us. If we will make a cheshbon of the accounting of the world, what does it mean to do a mitzvah? What does it mean to have eternal reward for a mitzvah? How much did it cost you to do this mitzvah? And on the other hand, what's the eternal suffering you get from the benefits of an avera? So this becomes the critical message over here of how we have to make these calculations and how that's so important. Okay, we'll end it at this point. I'm going to shut off the class just so I can start again for the Pirkei Avos class. And it's, Baruch Hashem, going to be a really good class. So I'm just going to turn off, and everybody can just get themselves back on if you want to hear the Pirkei Avos class.
Have a very good Shabbos, Rabbi. Shkoyach.
Thank you.
Shabbat shalom.
Thank
Shabbat
you.
shalom.
Okay, let's stop the recording.